And with that, we welcome in our good friend, covers baseball for USA Today, Steve Gardner. Steve, how are you?
I'm good. Better than the Orioles, that's for sure.
I mean, it's got to be killing you, right?
It is. It is painful to watch and painful to wonder, how long this streak is going to last and the team is going to be this putrid.
They're going to win a game. I mean, we know that. I like the fight I saw in them last night. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they were down, I think, 11 quickly. But look at their last couple games: 3-1, 5-4, 3-0. Couple hits here and there. They're playing hard, but they're a bad team. And when you get players that come out and say, "Man, we feel so overmatched and overwhelmed," who is that ultimately an indictment on?
Well, I think it's an indictment on the process, really, because they're not actively trying to get better on the diamond right now. They're looking at a timeline that I would imagine starts taking an upturn starting next year. When Adley Rutschman, the number one overall prospect in the majors and the number one pick in the draft a couple of years ago, when he comes up, I think the timeline sort of goes along with him and prospects like Grayson Rodriguez and D.L. Hall and these guys that we don't know right now, but at least if you're an Orioles fan, maybe you do, but we will hear more from these guys as they progress and get closer to the major leagues. And hopefully, if you're an Orioles fan, they all kind of come there all at once and, kind of lift the team all together, and nobody has to do the heavy lifting, but they have a lot more talent in the pipeline than they do right now, obviously, in the major league.
Kind of interesting when we talk about tanking in the respective sports, right? I mean, rebuilding teams value draft positioning more than they probably value games or meaningless games in the regular season, right? The NBA in particular, and you look at generational talents can change everything in the NBA. To some extent, the franchise quarterback in the NFL. Can't say the same thing about baseball. Perfect example. You look at the Angels. They got 2 stars, right? You need more than just 1 or 2 or 3 players to carry a baseball team to relevancy. And like I said, I mean, I look at this team, 38-86. I mean, it's just... Do you need wholesale changes here, as you alluded to, or they're just banking, or they're waiting for some of these young prospects? They're waiting for these young kids to come up, and they're going to give them, obviously, some time. I mean, it just seems as though I look at this roster, and it does, you got some players on this roster here. It's not like they're, Mullins and Mancini and even Franco to an extent, or is this just a situation where they're basically tanking?
No, I think it's one of those things where, they actively did not go out and get, prime free agents. They did sign Maikel Franco and then ended up DFAing him, I think, just this week.
Yes.
That was the extent of it. You're just trying to get players who can get out on the field and help them get through the season. But you're right. I mean, they discovered a gem in Cedric Mullins, in their farm system. Ryan Mountcastle looks like he's got some decent potential. Trey Mancini was an all-star and has performed that way for a couple of years, except for last year when he was out the whole season. There is some talent there. The pitching staff may be a little bit different, but again, John Moon's threw a no-hitter earlier this season.
Right.
So, there's a little bit of talent there. There's just not the depth that you see in, competent major league clubs. And I think that's what, the farm system now is ranked number 2 by Baseball America, I believe, or MLB Pipeline, as high as it's ever been in franchise history. So, they have the young guys coming through, but right now, it's just they don't have enough of those good players to be able to compete, especially in the American League East, where you've got 4 teams that are very good and have a lot of above-average major league players. The Orioles just don't have that.
Yeah.
And I think what's going to happen, Rich, is they're going to have to, number one, have some of those young guys come up, get some experience, and get better before they can be, a major league stars, above-average major league players. and then have to supplement the team with some free agents and possibly, a veteran to come in and provide some leadership.
Yeah, and it's a good example with Mullins, right? Finally giving this kid some games played and at-bats and having a career year. I mean, he's not a young 26, certainly not an old 26, but certainly a bright spot for the O's. And you mentioned that AL East. Can we wax poetic for a moment about my New York Yankees? I mean, my goodness. We knew about the offense, and they're getting it with pitching, but I'll tell you, man, I watched that game last night, and I'm like, why does it always have to be a white knuckler? Like, why does every time Chapman's in that spot, I'm like, come on, man. This is utterly ridiculous. Like, we're paying you X amount of dollars, or I should say the Yankees are paying them X amount of dollars. Just get through it unscathed. And then finally Peralta comes in, gets Freeman to fly out. They hold on for the 5-4 win. And that winning streak now for the Yankees has hit 11. What do you make of this turnaround, and what do you contribute this turnaround to?
Well, I think it's easy to say that the trade deadline, picking up Anthony Rizzo and Joey Gallo, has helped this team get better. And certainly it has balanced the offense a little bit more. But, like you were talking about, you're an 11-game winning streak, and you're like, gee, why does it have to be such a nail-biter? Why can't Chapman come in and just get three outs in the ninth? You've won 11 games in a row. This is a very good team. And people were at the beginning of the season or in the middle part of the season even, there was a lot of talk from Yankee fans about, does Brian Cashman need to be fired?
I was one of them.
Is Aaron Boone on the hot seat?
Yeah.
This has been a very good team. Well, maybe not very good. This has been a good team all the way through the season. But I think they've just been overshadowed by a red-hot start from the Red Sox and a very good team and the defending AL champion, Tampa Bay Rays. So it's all in the expectations. And right now I think we're seeing exactly what the Yankees can be when they're firing on just about all cylinders.
I think I poked the bear a little bit because we started with the O's slide, and then all of a sudden I got a gripe that Chapman has difficulty, and they win 11 in a row. So I think I woke up the bear a little bit, which is always good for banter. You mentioned that AL East, and you're right. I mean, the Red Sox trying to show signs of life. The Rays, to their credit, I thought the Phillies were going to help out the Yanks a little bit last night, but we know how bad the Phillies offense has been. The Rays, from start to finish, they've shown you once again, right, they're always going to be a player in the AL East. And then I think the bigger surprise to me, this is just me now, out of the West, I really didn't see the Oakland Athletics still hanging tough with the Houston Astros. Are you surprised that the A's are only 4.5 back?
Well, a little bit, but I think they made one of the best trades of all at the trade deadline in getting Starling Marte to come over there, and maybe they had a heads up on Ramon Laureano and his positive test for PEDs, because they're going to need a center fielder, and they got one of the best in all of baseball. And Marte has just been fabulous for them. I think in terms of, if you want to say value or calculate WAR or whatever, I think he's been the best guy to change teams in terms of his performance since the trade deadline. So he spurred them. They're still a very solid team. A playoff team from last year. They got Yan Gomes to add some depth behind the plate where they were kind of weak. And, this is just a team that does so much with not very much along the same lines as the Rays are. And, for them to still hang in there with the Astros and all of their talent, I think it's a testament to, the team, the organization, the front office, and the players on the diamond. It's a very good team, and they're going to be in there for the long haul here in September, I'm sure.
Extras in Detroit against St. Louis. I should say St. Louis against Detroit 2-2. Kansas City up on top of Houston 5-3. Chicago 5-2 over Colorado right now. Top of the seventh. Double dip there. So first pitch for the second game, 6:30. All right. I want to get your thoughts on the NL, which is fascinating to me in this regard. We'll stick with the NL East for a moment. I thought, and I've said this on the air, when it's all said and done, I had a feeling that the Braves were kind of going to leapfrog. I know some people thought the Washington Nationals were going to make a deep run. They're buried 13 back. The Mets are sliding. The Phillies, it's just unfortunate. They can't score. I mean, you know, you have these talent. You've got a good lineup, right? But when they need to contribute, they're not contributing. And then you see Didi's having a bad year. Wheeler seems to be their standout ace. You didn't get as much as you thought, even though some nice spot starts here and there from Nola. Harper's going to put up his numbers. Hoskins, I read a stat when I came on the air. When he's in the lineup, they're averaging almost a run more than when he's out, but they're minus 24 run differential. I can't see a scenario where the Mets and or the Phillies overtake the Braves. To me, as long as the Braves just keep pace and keep winning, they should win the NL East.
Yeah, I think that's that may be a foregone conclusion, at least in my mind, because the Braves, I think they knew that they still had a very good team. Even when the Mets were in first place and the Braves were on that little alternating win one, lose one, and never really putting together a huge streak. Even without Ronald Acuna, who's out for the season, I think they still have the best talent in terms of across the roster of any team in the NL East, and they're showing it now. I mean, the remade offense or the outfield that they had at the trade deadline, that was a nice move. A collective move by the front office there to get Duvall, and Jorge Soler has been very good for them. So, yeah, I think the Braves kind of saw that. They look at the playoff percentages and calculations, and I think they were 20% or something to win the NL East a month or so ago. They look like locks at this point. And, if they get they get Max Fried and those guys to just pitch the way that they can. I think it's a very dangerous team, and they may have Ian Anderson coming back off the IL before too long too, who was great during the playoffs and down the stretch last year. That would be another even more of a push for them in September.
I'm only bringing up the Marlins and the Nats. I just saw Heyman tweeted that Cabrera is going to make his long-anticipated debut tonight versus the Nats. And I guess a lot of scouts have said basically the only other changeup they've ever seen this good is from King Felix, which is really high praise. I mean, this is a big kid, 6'5", 217, the righty from the DR, ranked number 2 prospect in Miami's system. I mean, is this a pitcher that we can sit here and say, he's going to have all-star stuff 3, 4, 5 years down the line? Or do you look at this kid and say, he's legit, he's the real deal right now?
Well, I think he will be good. I don't think he's as polished as he needs to be. I mean, we saw Sixto Sanchez come in last year for the Marlins and look great right out of the gate. I don't know that Edward Cabrera is as polished. I mean, he needs a little bit better control, I think. The strikeout numbers, especially this year in the minor leagues at AAA, were eye-popping. But he does have a little bit of control issues, and where you can get away with that in the minors, you're not going to be able to get away with that in the major leagues, especially once you're just making your debut. So I wouldn't expect anything ridiculously good from him, but you will watch, if you watch the game tonight or see highlights, you're going to see some amazing physical talent, and I think this guy has the potential to be an all-star down the road, and you pair him with Sanchez and Alcantara. That's the Marlins rotation is going to be pretty scary here before too long.
Yeah, Lopez and Rogers too, right? I mean, not to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah. I was looking at his numbers: 13 starts this year, 2 with Class A Jupiter while rehabbing, 5 with AA Pensacola, 6 with AAA Jacksonville, 92 Ks against 25 walks over, 61 and a third. Opponents are hitting just 205 against him. But again, you're right. I mean, we're talking Major League, which is a different, a very different animal. All right. I still, every time I look up, I just can't believe that the San Francisco Giants, they just refuse to relinquish the lead in the West. Now, our picks, San Diego, we'll get to them in a moment, but is this one of the all-time great turnarounds you've seen over the last 25, 30 years to have this team with the Giants where it's amazing? Here's the stat, because I know you love when I throw out so many stats, because I already know you know this. You look at the San Francisco Giants, and typically when teams have these types of years, right, where they're 30, 40, 50 games over 500, in the Giants' case, almost 40 games over 500, 81 and 44. Every player is having pretty much a career year. Only one of them out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 has 20 or more home runs, which tells me you've got so many guys that are just contributing night in and night out. So what's your thought on the season that the Giants have had?
Yeah, I think somehow or another, whether it's Kapler, it's the coaching staff, they have been able to get the most out of this team, not only for this year, too. They were good last year and kind of flew under the radar a little bit. And you talk about it, Rich, they don't have anybody that's really mashing the ball and has these huge home run totals like we may see all 4 of the Braves infielders all have 30 home runs this season. But yet the Giants lead Major League Baseball in home runs as a team.
Yep.
So they're getting contributions up and down the roster better than any team in the major leagues right now. And that's from offense, that's from pitching, it's from the guys that they call up, the guys that they find on the waiver wire. I mean, like Lamont Wade Jr. is their leadoff guy, and basically they pulled him off the scrap heap. And that's the kind of guys that the Giants have made investments in, not long-term investments either, in some of these guys that they picked up, the D. Sclafanis and Kevin Gossman was re-signed, to a 1-year deal. It's just amazing how they have gotten the maximum out of everybody. And then to go out and get, Chris Bryant to provide that sort of experience down the stretch, I think that was a great coup for them. So as hard as it is to believe when you look up and down that roster, and you don't really see anybody other than names of guys that have been good in the past, a Buster Posey, somebody like that. How are they doing it? It's a mystery to me still, but yet they manage to keep winning, and then when they play the tough games against the elite competition, they continue to win. And it just may be a special season there in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and you mentioned all these players, and I threw out a player, a fan favorite with the Mets, and Wilmer Flores, who's had some big hits for them this year. And you're right, it could just be one of those years, but do they have the sustainability? Can they make it to the finish line without the Dodgers catching them?
I think so. I think the bigger question, however, is what happens when you get into the postseason. And over the long haul, the Giants' magic of having somebody come through and having somebody else the next night, that sort of thing, will they be able to do that when you get into a 5-game series or a 7-game series? That's the big question. When they have to go up against a Dodger rotation that has Max Scherzer and Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw and Julio Urias, that's where I think we'll see what the Giants are made of. But I think they certainly have the ability to hold off the Dodgers during the regular season. But when they go head-to-head with the Braves, maybe we'll see some cracks. But right now, I think the Giants are taking every critic and slapping everything back and saying, rejecting like the Kembe Mutombo.
Only one thing concerns me. Their quality starts over the last month plus. I think 6 have come from Logan Webb. So, you know this, right? Playoff baseball is a different animal, man. These guys, you want these guys, if they can go 6 2/3 or 7. It's crazy, right? Because you got Kapler with the Giants, who is a cast-off, and then you have La Russa with the White Sox. They're probably going to be AL, NL Manager of the Year, respectively.
Yeah, it could very well be. And it just goes to show, I think the Manager of the Year is probably one of the most overrated postseason awards.
Who would have been your... Yeah, well, why is that? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Why is that?
Just because it's all based on what you expect to have happen. I mean, for the most part, unless you're dealing with any number of huge losses and injuries or something like that. But I think it's all based on what people expect to happen at the beginning of the year, and when it doesn't turn out that way, then maybe it must have been a manager.
Who's your front runner for NL Cy Young?
Let's see. Gossman's got to be up there, but now he's hurt. I guess Walker Buehler probably has the combination of stats and fronting the rotation, and he's been there and has not been hurt. He's been there, taking all of his starts. He's probably the guy that has to be the front runner right now.
I get a lot of Philly fans, from a betting standpoint. Wheeler plus 185, Buehler plus 325. How about the season that Wheeler has had? It's not sexy, but it's been solid.
Yeah, it has been. And I think certainly when you talk about the pitchers that have been there and made a difference for their teams, Wheeler has certainly done that for Philly. So I would think he'd have to be somewhere in the mix, and a strong finish would certainly help. But he's up there. But I certainly would have Buehler ahead of him at this point.
Would you even put in the conversation Adam Wainwright? This guy's 39.
Probably not to the same degree, but that doesn't mean what Wainwright has done this year it is not worthy of certainly applause, amazement, and everything else. I mean, he doesn't overpower people anymore, but yet he's able to pitch deep into games, keep the Cardinals in games, and it seems like they're always, they're never out of it when he's on the mound, which is pretty much all you can ask for a pitcher.
Cabrera slugs is 500.
And at the age of 39. That's the other thing, too.
30, he's very close to 40. Cabrera slugs his 500 home run. Is he one of the most unheralded sluggers or underappreciated sluggers we've seen over the last 25-plus years?
Well, I'll tell you, my wife is from Michigan and is a Tigers fan, so I don't think he's been underrated maybe in terms of perhaps his career arc. But when he was winning MVP awards and Triple Crowns, I mean, you knew that the best slugger in the National League was Albert Pujols, and the best one in the American League was Miguel Cabrera. And I think both of them are lock first ballot Hall of Famers. Two of the best hitters that I think I've ever seen. So it's pretty hard to be underrated if you can say that.
Yeah, no, I guess the way I look at it is it seems as though you're right. I mean, he had that stretch, I would probably say 2009 to 2013, where you can argue he was the best player in the game. I mean, the guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, especially he's probably a career 315 hitter, over 500 home runs, right? I think he's
almost 3,000.
That's right, 3,000. I just put it on 2957. He's got 591 doubles, 17 triples, 501 home runs. He's got close to 1,800 RBIs, and he's a career 311 hitter. And it's crazy, right? Because people forget he spent the first 4 or 5 years of his career with Florida at the time, the Marlins.
Yeah, and not a great home run hitting park. He's never really played in a park that was friendly to hitters.
Yeah.
I mean, Florida, Detroit, it's tough to hit home runs in any of those parks that he's played in. So I wonder, what he might have done. How would he be closer to 600 if he played in more hitter-friendly parks during his career? That's certainly a question. But I mean, the talent and consistency that he's displayed, and it was really nice to see the love that he got in Toronto when he hit number 500 against them.
Yeah, remember, too, he missed about 100 games a couple of years ago. So, all right, because I couldn't get you on yesterday, and I know you a much-deserved vacay, but I'll give you a little turn back the clock. Do you know what occurred August 23rd, 1989? I've been waiting to get you on the air to have our annual conversation. So what happened August 23rd, 1989 in baseball?
1989.
We always seem to bring this individual up.
Okay. I don't know. Go ahead and at least give me a hint.
He got on base. He had a lot of hits.
Okay. Let's see. Raise Dogs is 3,000.
Well, I'll tell you this. He had a lot of hits, and it's apropos. This is a sports gambling station.
Oh, it was a Pete Rose kind of thing.
Pete Rose got booted from baseball.
What? That's right. Oh, man. Yes. One of our favorite topics.
Yeah. I've had so many people on Twitter said, when are you going to get your baseball guys on? When are you going to get Steve on? You guys love to go back and forth. And it's funny. I still maintain if he would have came clean, right, when they had the primetime special, it wasn't the 60 Minutes. It was I don't know what it was. But if he would have came clean, Pete Rose would have been in the Hall of Fame by now.
I wouldn't doubt it, because I think that's really all baseball fans wanted, was just to not be stubborn, to admit that he was a competitor and he liked his action on and off the field, and maybe you get a 5-year ban or something like that, but you may be absolutely right, Rich. He just dug his heels in and was not going to let go.
Yeah, I still, and again, I maintain, and he gets in the Hall of Fame after he leaves this earth, which is really sad. For years, I was outraged over everything, and then I think I've softened my stance because I see everything else, all the other transgressions in other sports. And look, I get it. It clearly states, it was the cardinal rule, a cardinal sin. I totally understand it. But man, you can go back to Mike Donlin, Hal Chase, John McGraw, right? They bet. They won $400 when the Giants won the World Series in 1905. Isn't that a form of gambling, right? Gambling on your own games. So I think I've lessened my stance with Pete Rose. I was very staunch and adamant and say no. I think I'm getting a little more softer in my old age.
Well, and what will be interesting is we're 40 years down the road or so from now, or 30 years down the road, we see where does baseball go with the involvement and the partnerships with the gambling sites and sports betting and all of that. How is that relationship? I think perhaps we look at the whole Pete Rose thing even more differently 30 years down the road than we do now. So it's a strange and ever-changing world we live in.
It is, but even with these other sports, the NBA, the NFL knows where their bread is buttered. They understand that. Gambling's billion-dollar industry. Now they find a way. And I always go back to when I was a kid and watching the NFL Today, when you had Musburger and Irv Cross and you had Jimmy the Greek. Jimmy the Greek would never say the line. What Jimmy the Greek would say, Brent would basically say, Giants and the Cowboys, what's your thoughts? Well, I think the Giants are a touchdown better. Hello, that's wink, wink. They're going to win by more than 7 points. So as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, I'm watching this, and I even knew. So it's like for the NFL to pretend like it doesn't exist. And now all these sports teams are getting in bed. I mean, look at Barstool. Look what they're able to do, right? They get an opportunity to call a bowl game, to have the bowl game rights. You don't think gambling is going to be incorporated into that broadcast? People would think they're nuts if they're not going to incorporate that.
Absolutely. And it would not surprise me if we see, we've seen the StatCast broadcast, in conjunction with a Major League Baseball broadcast on Sunday Night Baseball. It would not surprise me if very soon we don't have some sort of sports betting centric, in-game props kinds of things where the announcers are talking about the game, but there's the other information, rather than the Vin Scully stories about, the young man is a 22-year-old coming up through the minor leagues. You get stories about bad beats and, what the prop bets are coming up in the seventh inning. That sort of thing.
Oh, my goodness, you're right. My goodness, I can't imagine, the great Buck rolling over saying, "We'll see you tomorrow night," and the Cardinals won it on the money line. I mean, you just can't. It's just like, wow. He is Steve Gardner, of course, baseball writer, reporter, and senior fantasy editor at USA Today Sports. Give him a follow at Steve A. Gardner. You are the best, my friend. I always appreciate a couple moments.
Thanks so much, Rich. Always a pleasure.
All right, you got it. Be well. There he is, the great Steve Gardner. Fantastic stuff. Quick timeout. We'll come back on the other side.